Everybody. It's nice to see you again, at least metaphorically, since I don't actually see you. And I wish more than I can say that we were all in the big room together, which is my favorite thing, as you know, for you to ask questions and me to answer them. But we did not want the process to become stalled, even if the way that we go about it is going to be a little bit different today. You've heard me say many times, so many times you could probably say it with me, that the only bad question is the one that you don't ask. If it's in your mind and you want an answer to it, I hope you will ask it this morning. Many questions were pre submitted, and I'm going to start with those. So I'll start with those and then I'll move to any questions that you have this morning. I'm told it does take a couple of minutes for the questions that you type in to come to me. So if you wanted to submit any of those while I'm answering the pre-submitted questions, I'll be sure to catch them at the end. If we run out of time today, which I don't anticipate that we will, and if you would like, I will do another session next week sometime to make sure that all the questions get answered. The vice presidents are here with me this morning, with the exception of Vice President Whipke, who's on approved personal leave, and so they'll be joining me and answering some of the questions and maybe making some comments that they have as well. I wanted this to be more of a Q&A with the entire executive team of the college and not just with me. I'll take a first pass at answering the majority of the questions. You won't be surprised there are a lot to do with COVID-19, so I'll plunge in immediately with those. And the first question was, if we didn't get the vaccine in the first round, but we would like to get it, what steps do we take? We've already rolled out a process through the Office of the President with the Chief of Staff in charge, in which people are filling out the same simple information that you were asked to fill out last time if you want to be in the second round of vaccines. The state health officer for the community college system tells us that she anticipates that as many employees as want the vaccine will be able to get it as long as the supply holds, and she has no reason to anticipate that the supply will not hold. So we're actually a little bit ahead of the curve in getting a list started for people who want to receive it in a second round. We developed a matrix, which I explained to the community very thoroughly. We weren't required by the state to do that, but I wanted to be as fair in the administration and the ordering of the vaccine as I could. So we used the criteria the state asked us to consider, which are age, pre-existing medical conditions, or face-to-face versus remote work. And we didn't feel good about requiring people to disclose their medical conditions, so we made it optional that people could do that or not. So we've taken those things into consideration in planning the order of the vaccine. And I am told that more than 40 people have already volunteered for the second round. So I would encourage those of you who are interested to do that sooner rather than later, because we're going to try to get that second round started as soon as we can, maybe even concurrent with the first round. Second question is, how's the vaccine schedule proceeding? How many people have received it to date, and is there a delivery schedule? I would say it's proceeding extremely well, and I'm not one to pass the buck, as you know, but I would also want you to know that we have no control and little influence over this process. Most all of these decisions are being made at the state level. We appreciate the governor and the chancellor for making higher education a priority and allowing us to receive vaccines in most states, or many states at least. Higher education hasn't made the cut as much as we did in getting priority order. So 10 people were vaccinated in week one. We're scheduled to have 20 people vaccinated this week. I thought that might happen yesterday. I understand that has not happened. My hope is that it will happen today. What you should know is that the local health department picks up all of our vaccine from the state hub because they know all the protocols for handling. It has to be handled in sub-zero and with kid gloves, and it's better for them to take the responsibility for doing that because their health professionals. And while I appreciate that some of our nursing faculty were willing to administer the vaccines, and while they're highly qualified to do that, it makes sense as well in my mind for the health department to do that. So 10 people went to the health department and got it last week. I'm hopeful that 20 more will by the time that the day is over. 78 people requested the vaccine in the first round. We anticipate 20 this week, 20 next week, and we would hope that in 1 week further out from that, that we will have finished with all of the people who volunteered in the first round, which will significantly put everyone, whether they got it in week 1 or week 4 or 5, ahead of the curve of when the general public is receiving the vaccine. So I think it's going. I think it's going well. As far as the delivery schedule, we don't set that delivery schedule here. We follow the guidance that we get from the state, and then we follow the guidance that we get from the health department about when the shots are given. I will say to anyone who is on the list, it is imperative, which is a word that I don't use that often, that if you signed up, that you show up. Because if even we waste one dose of the vaccine by somebody not showing up, we are in some peril that it might influence receiving the vaccine in the future. Everybody showed up in the first week, so I hope that everybody will show up in the subsequent weeks, and we will have a couple of alternates on standby, which are just the next people on the list. So I think that's going well. Might we get back to face-to-face instruction this semester? And if we do, will faculty have to come back face-to-face, or will they be able to choose how to finish the semester with their students? Tell the truth and spite the devil is what my grandmother told me when I was a child, is how I try to live my life. I think it is highly unlikely that we will return to face-to-face instruction this semester, though I do hold out some hope for it. If the vaccines continue, if herd immunity is achieved, if some miracle occurs and the pandemic abates, then nobody will be more excited about coming back face to face than I will. But that's a line that I drew in the sand. I was the first one in the state of West Virginia to draw it, and I'm not inclined to apologize for that. I feel like the quality of our bonding experience has certainly been diminished, and problems have been created for some of our students, faculty, and staff because of the switch to online education. But at the same time, I marvel at how extremely well and resilient and creative everybody has been with that, proving that it can be done. I do still plan presently to allow a small amount of the technical programs and a small amount of the labs that simply cannot be conducted in an online manner to move forward. The faculty in charge of field placements and clinicals and I are in almost constant communication, and that's a moving target depending on what the schools and the hospitals do and how safe it is that I feel for our students to go out. So whether you agree or whether you disagree, you will have to admit that we are consistent in our belief that promoting public health and protecting your safety is the single most important responsibility that we have. Should we come back? That's a conversation that I would have with the provost and the chairs and the faculty about how that would be finished. I'm not inclined in general to force anyone to come into what they consider to be harm's way. So I would imagine a scenario in which if some people came back, then faculty who have a particular reason not to want to might be allowed to continue the semester however you chose, though I think that's a moot point because I think it highly unlikely that we will come back to any additional face-to-face instruction. I am, however, very hopeful for summer, very hopeful that by summer and fall it might be possible for us to do things in the way that we enjoy. Could there be a COVID testing facility on our campus? There already are COVID testing facilities on both of our campuses for the random surveillance testing that is required by the state. I am very pleased with how the random surveillance testing has gone. Dr. Smith and his team have been leading that. And it has actually, there have not been many positives, but it has caught a few positive cases and allowed people to know that about their health and allowed them not to endanger others. So I think that's gone extremely well. We have allowed, in some cases, when we had extra test kits that came from the state, we've allowed other employees who've possibly been exposed or something like that to utilize those to the full extent of the test kits that we have available. I don't envision that I will open either campus up for a public testing facility because my goal has been to minimize the number of people coming onto campus, not to maximize it in any way. Although I have allowed and will probably continue to allow a couple of drive-through outdoor testing situations, which have been apparently appreciated by the community. And if we're asked by public health officials to do that again in the future, I would envision that we will. How has COVID affected enrollment over 12 months? You all know enrollment is something that I like to talk about quite a lot. You may or may not know that I'm a national commissioner for the American Association of Community Colleges. And at the last meeting of that group, we heard that community college enrollment has taken the hardest hit of any sector of higher education. And the more current data continues to bear that out. Overall, across the country, community college enrollment is down about 10%. New freshman enrollment is down about 20%. Enrollment of historically underserved students in community colleges is down about 30%. That is alarming. I am very proud to tell you, because of the hard work of everybody within the sound of my voice and a whole lot of other people, we are bucking the trend in a very positive manner. The first term that was significantly affected by COVID-19 would have been the summer term of 2020. We were up 10% overall in our enrollment for that term. For fall 2020, we were statistically level in our enrollment in every way except early college. And we were up, I believe it is 16%. It's very close. 15, 17, 16 is the number I'm going to choose this morning for new student enrollment in fall 2020. We believe that we will get the early college students back on the other side of the pandemic. We value them very much, but if we had to have any sector that was down, that's the one that's the most understandable because the high schools are having so many issues and the parents are having so many issues to deal with coming at them at the same time that it's really hard for them to focus on the priority of early college in this moment. I would commend Dr. Jackson and everybody who worked so hard to keep those numbers as high. No group could have worked harder to keep those numbers higher. So in early college is down a little bit. Other than that, everything is statistically level or even possibly up a little bit. And that is frankly as amazing as you know, and a little bit more amazing than that probably compared to what's happening in the rest of West Virginia and across the nation as well. How's it looking for spring? We still have a few more days that we will be taking some late registrations because we extended registration, and these numbers will change slightly. I anticipate they may go up a little bit before the end of next week. I don't anticipate that they will go down before the end of next week. We are at a place that I would say we're statistically level. We need, by my math, which is always a little scary because I haven't had it certified by the accounting firm of Harris and Harris, who does all my higher math for me yet. But I think that we're down about 19 students in headcount and about 48 students in full-time enrollment when you take out the early college students. That would be our traditional college population. I think it is likely that we may close 19 headcount students and 48 students FTE before the end of next week to have a moment when we start the semester with level enrollment. And I thank everybody, every team who has worked on that. A real success story this semester looks like it's going to be in our continuing students. Today, we have the first two of our matrices that crossed over 100% for the first time. They may fall below again, but for one day today, our matrix as far as continuing students is 101.84%, which means it's up 1.84 percent. That does not happen in higher education, even in good times. Imagine the hard work that Provost Crumbaker and others have done, everybody has done, to get to that amazing retention number. And I think that Dr. Smith's team is within almost single digits of having an increase in new students for the spring as well. So the enrollment picture, which I realize I spend a good bit of time on, but I know it's important to you as it is to me, is frankly amazing, considering that we're almost a year into a pandemic now. And I thank everybody for your hard work on that. Are they deep cleaning the campus and particularly the bathrooms? Yes, I verified with our maintenance team that they are cleaning with the machine that I don't know the best way to explain it, but the big machine that is considered the highest degree of environmental cleaning that can be provided. They're doing that on the night crew. They're also using chemicals that are supposed to kill and control the virus to clean things, and particularly the bathrooms. If there is a bathroom in particular that you note that needs attention, if you will call it to the attention of Bob Cooper or Brady Whitke, I'm certain that they will get that attended to in a timely manner. But the deep cleaning of the campuses does continue on both campuses. How does it appear that some employees are having so much vacation time or working remotely? Um, I would just say appearances can sometimes be deceiving, and unless you have all of the information, you probably should not jump to conclusions about that. Some of our jobs absolutely require us to be present to do them. And some of our jobs allow for people to work remotely to do them and still get them done. Is that fair? I don't know whether it is or not, but it is an inescapable truth that you can't clean a building or police a parking lot or take a payment in the business office or many other things unless you're here to do it. We've tried to protect those people as much as we could by rotating shifts where we can. And I am of the belief that the people working remotely protect not only the people working remotely, but they protect the people working face to face as well. Because the fewer people that we have in the facilities, in order to keep all the student facing offices covered, which we have done, the less likely it is that we have community spread of COVID-19. As far as the difference between working remotely and vacation time, you know, when people are taking pure vacation, as for instance I did during the Christmas break, even on the days that I worked, the week of Christmas and New Year's, I took vacation days for those days, even though I did work on just about all of those days. And I'm just using me as one personal example of that. Other days, when people are remote, wherever they are, I think we should make the assumption that they are carrying out whatever duties it is that they're called on to carry out. So I think we've done this as fairly and equitably as we can figure out how to do in protection of the interest of public health. And as with all things, if anybody has any suggestions about how to do it better, I would be very willing to entertain those. Did security receive hazard pay for working through COVID-19, and were they offered the vaccine ahead of others? They were not offered the vaccine ahead of others because we followed the rules that the state of West Virginia gave us about how to prioritize the order, and they did not bring certain classifications of employees forward. They may possibly do that in future. We understand that they may move students who are going out to do field placements or clinicals possibly ahead of other students when the vaccine is made available to students, and we hope and advocate that it will be. So we're not determining the priority order of vaccination. We're following the rules that were given. As far as hazard pay, no, nobody's received any hazard pay, even though everybody, I would suggest, who's been working or living has been working and living in the middle of a hazard, and there are some reasons for that. I don't know how well you understand the particular governing laws regarding wages in West Virginia. I've come to understand them reasonably well, and they make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for me to financially reward employees beyond the normal salary that those employees receive. In fact, I am strongly encouraged, if not required, not to give more than $25 worth of financial reward outside of contracted assignment to any employee. I'll tell you this, though you can't spend it. If I had had the opportunity and my hands weren't tied, not only security personnel, but everybody who has stepped up during this pandemic would have had a bonus or some sort of financial remuneration from me, because I think it is well deserved. I will point out to you, however, that many colleges in West Virginia and many colleges across the country have laid off people, have furloughed people, have downsized whole departments. And fortunately, because we're well managed fiscally, we've not been required to do any of that, nor do we anticipate that we'll be required to do that during the pandemic. So I think we've been as fair and just as the law allows us to be with our employees. And I live within the law, even though there are things about it that I might wish that I could um, change. I will tell you that people who've been called on to work overtime, who are on what's currently called a classified pay scale, have received overtime pay, and a good many people have received that. I will tell you, however, that exempt employees, and I will miss 50 who have gone above and beyond in this regard by the one that I'm about to call out, haven't received a dime for the extra hours that they have worked. And I won't call out one by name. I will call out the vice presidents as a body in this regard. Every one of them has worked a significant amount of overtime during this pandemic, and senior staff are not receiving any sort of special consideration or compensation that other staff are not receiving. So we're going to do as well by our people as we can financially. And that's the best answer that I can give you about that. That's the end of the suite of questions about COVID-19. And I'll move into a few other questions about various topics. And I'm going to ask some of the VPs to jump in and help me with these. Has there been progress in developing a standard family leave policy? Excuse me. Honestly, probably not as much progress as there should have been. Thank you for the note. And we will put it back toward the top of the list of things to work on. It has not been ignored, however, because I have had conversations at the state level with the chancellor and with other presidents, and actually, there's not resistance as far as I can see, as there was at some past time, so I'm told, before I arrived, for having such a policy. The chancellor is in general in support of such a policy existing. And I hope that this semester we can make progress toward getting something put together for the employee body here to consider. It's complicated. Some people are on 12-month contracts. Some people are on 9-month, 10-month contracts. Some people aren't on contract at all. And so all of these different classifications of employees have to be considered and treated equitably. And so it is duly noted. While we've been spending a little more time of late on trying to get the phased retirement, which I know is important to a lot of people, and the tenure issue, which I know is important to the faculty body as a whole. We've been spending a little more time on that lately, but we recognize that family leave is important. We'll continue to work on it. And I do believe that we have been fair and sometimes more than fair in the individual case by case decisions, which we've been called on to make about family leave. In fact, a policy, when it's put in place, has the potential that it could be more restrictive than what we allow to people on a case by case basis. I don't say that as a warning. I'm not suggesting that that will be the case. I'm just saying that it's possible that it could be. But we will try to get a policy, and when we have one, we will follow it. And in the interim, we will try to be as fair and more than fair as we can to the people that this impacts. How do we show our appreciation to frontline workers that have been at the college throughout the pandemic? I am not slow to give praise, and I think that I give it profusely. And I watch the leaders of the college in all levels of leadership demonstrating appreciation for jobs well done. And so, if there is anybody within the sound of my voice or anybody that you know who feels overlooked or missed in the demonstration of my appreciation, then let me rectify that now and tell you that everybody who works here, everybody who learns here is important, and that I could not possibly be more grateful to you than I am. If inherent in that question is why has there not been a bonus or something like that, then I've addressed that question already. Sadly, my hands are fairly tied, and my love and appreciation is about all that I'm allowed to give, but I give it wholeheartedly. Why are there so many reserved parking spots? Shouldn't our students have better spots? Uh, it's no secret that while every employee of the college is very important to me, I think the students are the most important people here. I think they're far and away more important than I am. And there would be no purpose of this college or any other if it weren't for the students. Having said that, though I think I show priority to the students in many ways, pretty much every college I've ever served and every college I've ever visited, and that's up in the hundreds by now, offers some sort of priority parking for faculty and staff based on their seniority, based on the fact that they've already achieved a certain degree of education or professional accomplishment. And I don't think that it diminishes our commitment to our students in any way if there is some sort of priority parking given for faculty, staff, and visitors. Having said that, I don't think there's a bad parking place on our campus. I have walked a mile before to get to my office, some of the places that I've worked. We even built one new parking lot since I've been here that wasn't even here before to try to make it easier because we heard of the burden that our students and others in welding were facing carrying very heavy equipment and things of that nature. So we built a parking lot there. So in general, I think parking is good. At the request of the Faculty Senate, I quickly and enthusiastically approved parking for faculty. And then the pandemic hit, and I don't think anybody's gotten to use the parking places since the approval of them took place, but they were nonetheless approved. As far as what I think is probably the real question here is why are there so many parking places that have that are assigned to position? I'm not passing the buck, but I inherited that. There were many parking places assigned by position when I arrived, and I wanted to respect the culture of the place that I found, so I didn't take any of those away. I did, however, feel compelled to add some, and the reason for that is because equity is important to me. If one person who carries the title director has by virtue not of their name, but by virtue of their position, an assigned parking place, then I think everybody else who has that comparable position ought to have the opportunity to have a parking place as well. So that's why you've seen a few of them added. Having said that, I could use the exercise. So if everybody else on campus wants to give up their priority parking places, that's a conversation that I'm willing to have. But I do not believe that there are any significant inequities in parking. I believe that those have been fairly addressed. Also, many colleges and universities I've served charge their employees to park on campus, and that will not happen during my administration. I don't think you ought to have to pay to park at the place that you come to do your job. But I don't think that we're out of line with national trends. In fact, I think we're probably better in that regard than most of the national trends are. How have our operating costs evolved over the past 12 months, and has our revenue changed significantly? Very lightly, I'm going to answer this question, and I'm going to ask Alex to plunge into it in some more depth, if she will. Operating costs in some ways are down because we've not had electric bills and things of that nature that have been quite as high. We've not been spending quite as much money on supplies and things of that nature. Alice can give you a better explanation of that. And as far as revenue, we received a good infusion of money, of stimulus money, and we may, in fact, be going to receive soon a larger infusion of stimulus money. But many of our grants we've not been able to claim because the work that goes forward on those grants hasn't been able to be done. Even so, we've not stopped paying any of the people who work on those grants. So our fiscal position is good and strong, but I'm going to ask Alice to answer those questions to whatever more degree of detail she would like.
Thank you, President Gilmer. Colleagues, I wish I could see your faces. This is kind of unusual and strange, so I'll try to be as concise as possible. If you'll remember, we went into the FY21 budget back in January of 2020. So we started this budget, preparing it before we even knew about the pandemic. And since that time, during the spring, as we learned more about the pandemic and its effect on our operations, we started to make some adjustments. One of the things we knew going into FY21 is the prior year we had a $500,000 special appropriation from the state, but we had already addressed the fact that that was a one-time item and we had used it for one-time purchases. For this year, our revenue is actually down about $600,000, but again, 500,000 of that is because of the special appropriation not being here. The other 100,000 is kind of a mixture, as Dr. Gilmer said. Some of our programs, for example, I'll use our workforce program, not pointing fingers at them in a negative way. All of those people are still working and trying very hard to maintain relationships with our local businesses so that when COVID is over, we can resume the trainings that we were doing. But the fact is, we're not able to have those trainings now. So in terms of their revenue, they're lagging behind. On the other hand, we do have the stimulus money that Dr. Gilmer talked about, which we've used to help pay for some of the additional costs we incurred for technology-enabled learning costs. We've been able to add several different types of software to assist students in getting through their education. It is true that the occupancy expenses are down. If you don't have students in classrooms, then you also don't incur costs related to that. We've had no cost associated with travel to speak of. And although we've tried to keep Ricky's open at some level, because of COVID, we've had several times when we've had to close Ricky's down and give a cooling off period, so to speak. But it's certainly not been operating at any normal level where revenues would be generated. On the other hand, we're also not incurring expenses at the same level we would for keeping the cafeteria open. So the bottom line is, even though our revenues are shifting and it's a little bit more difficult to manage and plan, we're still in really good shape year to date through the first 6 months. And our cash flow is still positive. And I would say, barring any major unknown expense or any major additional loss of revenue, we will be able to, I believe, operate within the parameters of the budget that we finally settled on in June. So it's a positive thing. And, like I said, it's more of a challenge. And I am very thankful for the stimulus money that we have, because it helps take some of the pressure off of trying to figure out how to juggle and pay for some of the things that the tools that the faculty needed and the tools that the students needed in order to be able to effectively conduct technology enhanced learning.
Thank you, EVP Harris. And the only thing I would add is that we passed a significant amount of the money, the stimulus money, directly through in many grants to our students. And we assume that we will be able to do that in the next round of stimulus funding, which we hope may be coming soon. We don't have a lot of details about that yet, but we do believe it's coming, and we believe that we'll be able to pass some of it through directly to our students as well. When will staff get the new pay scale? What about raises? What about an exempt staff pay scale? A good number of the staff affected by the Mercer pay plan, the first phase of that already went into effect some time ago. The second and final phase of it has been significantly slowed and impacted by COVID-19. And there's really not a lot more to say about that. It is a high priority for me. It is a high priority for our human resources staff. We have conversations about it. I do with them on a weekly basis at least, and I anticipate that they're having daily conversations about it, and progress is being made. I cannot give you a hard and fast date, because I wouldn't want to do that and then not be able to meet it. But I do believe the finalization of the Mercer pay increases will be coming. I can tell you that Alice and I put the money in the budget to fully fund those as soon as they are here. What about raises in general? While it may surprise some of you, I'm fairly conservative fiscally, and I need to see what enrollment is going to come in and where it's going to finalize for spring before we can consider any raises. So I can't really answer that question now, though I did tell you earlier that enrollment is trending in a positive direction right now. Most of the money that I had hoped to use for significant raises is tied to the implementation and the realization of the strategic recruitment plan. And I believe in the very short window we had before COVID, that plan has already proven that it can work. And I believe that it will work on the other side of the pandemic. And I believe that it will generate the revenue that will be needed for the raises that everyone deserves. But pandemics have a way of changing everything and slowing things, and these things have been slowed in that regard. But I want you to know that there's not a day that passes that I don't think about and realize that everybody deserves to be fairly and equitably paid for the excellent work that you do. And I do believe that on the other side of this, and I believe we're getting closer to the other side of this, that we'll be able to implement some of those things. As far as an exempt pay scale, A classified pay scale is fairly prescriptive, and there's not much room for interpretation of that on the part of the employee or on the part of human resources or administration. Exempt pay scale is more challenging in that the ranges in which people can be hired, starting from 0% up to 100%, are larger. I will tell you that we generally employ people at the very beginning people at the low end between the 0 and the 25th percentile. Not because they don't deserve more, but because we don't want those salaries to be significantly out of parity with classified salaries. We take into consideration years of direct experience in a particular job. We take in experience, higher education, and things of that nature in determining placement on the salary scale. And so that's how it's done, good, bad, or indifferent. And I will tell you that um, Scott Poe, our HR director, Debbie Richards, our director of equal opportunity. I'm pretty sure I'm not quite getting the title right, Debbie, and you'll forgive me for that, but you get the spirit of it, everyone, are in conversations with me, and we'll move into conversations with the vice presidents shortly about evaluating policies, practices, and things of that nature related to salary, related to hiring. But these things are much more complicated than I realized when I came that they are. And they're probably more complicated than everybody else realizes they are as well. So my commitment is that we are working to find a good, positive way forward as quickly as we can in this regard. Um, Discuss the hiring process, especially related to equal opportunity and the pre-screening of candidates before they come to hiring managers. Um, there is a sense on campus that hiring is sometimes a slow and arduous process. Um, but there's a sense on pretty much every other campus that I've ever served that hiring is a slow and arduous process. The reason that candidates are screened is they're screened to make sure that they meet the minimal qualifications that were agreed on by the hiring manager in advance. If we get 25 applicants for a position, HR screens out whatever number of them do not meet minimal qualifications. They're not making value judgments or things of that nature. They're just looking for years of experience, degrees, such as that. The reason that equal opportunity comes into it is we are both legally and I believe ethically bound to try to promote diversity in hiring, and there would have to be legally a point in the process in which candidates were screened in that regard. We choose to do it before instead of after. So again, only the people who are likely to advance are advanced to hiring managers. Hope that makes sense to you. If it doesn't and it sounds convoluted, even as I say it, then it at least reinforces the fact that it's a complicated process. Alice and I, and Scott and Debbie, and perhaps some others more than a year ago, did a fairly significant revision of the policies and procedures that govern human resources, and that endowed the hiring managers, I think, with more input and authority. But it's clear, and I understand from the community that we have more work to do in that regard. And it's a priority for us to do that work this semester. Are we still considering housing? Yes. I am delighted to say that Professor Billy Stone, Professor Justin Bosley, and in fact, pretty much I think everybody in that department worked with a group of really great students last semester to do a feasibility study. And I'll be sharing that feasibility study shortly. But the bottom line of it is that There's a split of opinion in our community, as I expected that there would be, about the need and appropriateness for housing. There are those who think that we won't be able to recruit more students, particularly we won't be able to recruit them from faraway places for some of our truly exemplary programs unless we have a place to put them. We won't be able to recruit international students unless we have a place to put them. Then there's a school of thought that should we really take on that additional debt? Should we really take on that additional responsibility? And so, what I committed to was a fair and thorough hearing on the subject, and that will happen this semester, and it will be informed by the excellent work that our students, under the tutelage of their faculty members, did. They saved us a significant amount of money by doing this report, and they did something that I think is of comparable quality to what quote unquote professionals who do this work do all across the country. So, yes, is the short answer. That was the long answer. More to come on that conversation. Tell us about the main duties and the accomplishments of the downtown Parkersburg Center and the people who are working downtown. Dean Gowdy and all of the people who are working downtown, in my view, have done an exemplary job. The greatest value is intangible, but that doesn't make it any less valuable. People see that we are physically committed to downtown Parkersburg, and they appreciate that. I cannot tell you from business leaders in the community how many people have told me that they appreciate seeing us on Market Street. It's also good for Dr. Jackson's marketing and other things and branding for them to see us down there with our signage everywhere. That's intangible, but that doesn't make it any less valuable. But let me give you some tangible things as well. The Arts Collaborative of the Mid-Ohio Valley, which has not cost WVUP a penny really, because we got a grant from the Ross Foundation to do it, has brought together about a dozen nonprofits, arts organizations in the community, serving as an umbrella for them. And there is, I believe, because of that, even more enthusiasm around the arts and WVUP's role in it than it has ever been. That work happens exclusively out of the downtown center. The downtown center has taken the greatest role in bringing the Riverhawk Farm back to life, though a whole lot of people have been involved in helping with that. We grew potatoes, which Mr. B Potato Chips made potatoes locally grown in West Virginia, maybe for the first time ever, if not for the first time in recent memory this past year, and proved the concept that the Riverhawk Farm can come back into production. And we're looking for ways to enhance that in this growing season. So the folks downtown are busy and accomplishing what I think to be a lot of good work. Why did the Wood County First Robotics team have to leave the Caperton Center? I would point out to you that we co-own the Caperton Center with the Wood County Public Schools. We have a wonderful working relationship with the Wood County Public Schools and all the schools in our area. And I suspect one of the main reasons that we have that is because we don't tell them how to run their business. So while we set protocols for wearing masks and social distancing and things of that nature, and they have been very good to follow them. To the best of my knowledge, WVU Parkersburg has not told any high school students that it cannot be on that they cannot be on our campus. And I don't know what might have happened with the robotics team. I can just tell you that if anything happened with them, I don't believe that WVU Parkersburg is responsible for that in any way. We encourage the public schools to run their aspect of the Caperton Center as they see fit to run it, just as they support us in doing the same. And the last pre-asked question is, what is the status of the on-campus health center? And coming relatively soon, I guess, is the best answer that I could give. There are many, many state and federal hurdles which have to be cleared to make this happen. But we would not have announced it if we were not fairly certain that we were going to be able to clear all of those hurdles. So until the day that the first patient is seen, I cannot tell you with 100% certainty that the health center is coming, but I can tell you short of that with a great deal of certainty that we're working on it. We're getting the facility cleaned out. I plan to meet as early as next week with Rob Dudley, who's the CEO of Copeland Health Clinics, to talk about next steps. They've got the cost estimate for uh, repurposing the building for that purpose. And so I think that that is coming. So now we have 8 minutes of the hour left, and I'm willing to stay longer, though I like to be a good respecter of all of your time. So I want two things to happen now. I want any of the vice presidents who didn't have an opportunity to expand briefly on any of the points that I made or anything that they might want to say. And then I want Dr. Jackson to feed me any additional questions that might have come in during real time. Is there anything that any of the vice presidents would wish to add to the answers that I gave this morning? If not, I will assume that I was a model of thoroughness and ask Dr. Jackson if there are any additional questions that have come in.
Currently, Dr. Gilmer, there is only one additional question, and that is, what is the status of phased retirement?
The status of phased retirement is that I hope that I will be able to appear before a joint commission of the West Virginia legislature, which has to give its approval for it before we can move forward. I hope that I will be able to get that done in the um, early part of the legislative session, though it's not formally scheduled yet. We have taken the steps that we can take on this campus in that we got the Board of Governors to approve it in concept. So as soon as we're able to get it cleared through the West Virginia legislature, we hope that we will be able to begin implementing it. While I will not make you a solemn promise that we will be able to implement it in time for fall contracts, I'm very optimistic that we will be able to. Any other questions, Dr. Jackson?
Not at this time.
Okay, as you all know, you can ask me any question anytime, and whether you like the answer or not, you will know that you have gotten what I think to be a truthful, transparent response to it. And I will think more of you, not less, for you having asked it. So follow up with me or any of the vice presidents with any additional questions that you have, and we'll try to get them answered for you. Thanks to the students for your resilience. Thanks to the faculty and staff for your creativity and endurance in getting ready for us to begin classes next week. We're going to get started, and I think it's going to be a great semester at WVU Parkersburg. So thanks for being with me today, and have a great weekend. Goodbye.